Hello there everyone, it's Carol here from the Crafty Emporium. Welcome back to my channel, nice to see you here again. Does this look like a familiar sight to you on your work desk? You've got stuff everywhere and you've got maybe a couple of square inches to work in. Yeah, I do that too. So I came up with a little box that I'm going to show you how to make. So this is the box. Now I'm on the HP, if I could speak properly, instant ink program with my printer, and they send me out inks in the post when I'm starting to run short. Now the newer boxes, they're not quite so easy to use, but the older ones are really handy. Now you don't have to use the HP instant boxes because you can make, you know, your own boxes, or you can use any kind of packaging that you've got. So I'm going to show you how to make one of these, and I'm going to show you what it looks like with all of this now off the desk and in here. So this is what it does. It opens up here and it opens up so that I've got two trays side by side, but when it's closed, when I'm not using it, I can stand stuff on top of it. All right. So I'm going to show you what this lot now looks like when I put it in here and how much more workspace I've got to work with. So there we go. Look, I've got all this workspace. Now I've got this over here in shot, but if I was using it, you know, on a day-to-day basis, I would actually have it over here out of the way, which means then that you wouldn't get to see it. So then I've got all of this space to use, but I wanted to show you that I've managed to get everything that was on my desk now in that box. Now, these were the boxes that I was on about that I've used, and so basically you just pull that flap up, lift it up, and then you've got this tray here at the bottom. So you'd need two of these boxes, and then you cut off this lid part here. So I just cut off the actual flap lid. Now I've kept these because I'm also going to show you how you can use these then to make them into a journal cover. The other thing that I did as well was, if I take it apart, might be able to see it better then, mightn't you? So you've got these flaps here that come up and over the top and down. All right, so I'm actually going to cut this excess off as well because it makes this part too bulky here, and I want it to be sort of flat. Is just put some glue on these flaps. I might need to get another glue out because I think these are, oh no, we're all right. We're all right, girls, we're all right. So I'm just going to stick that up against there. I can now see where I need to cut it off so that I've got a nice straight top across there. So now you can see it's far less bulky than at this side. So I would do exactly the same on this side as well. And then that's my two trays then prepared. The next part then is to actually cover all of the edges and all of the sides as well. Now I use this construction tape, and I got mine from Claire Charville from My Creative Spirit. So I tend to use that. Is I cut a strip to go over or around the corner. And I do that on all four corners. I do try to get it sort of equal so that there's an equal amount on each side, but because I'm making a video, I'm not paying too much attention to that. But as I say, I do try and get it so that there's half, because this is a 1 inch wide one, so I try and get half an inch on this side and half an inch on that. I'm not that precious about it, but so then I do the four corners, and then I do the top and the bottom as well. So they're covered too. Now, of course, you could just paint your box. So you could get some black acrylic paint, or whatever colour you prefer, and then just paint it instead of using tape. I'm going to show you another alternative as well in a minute. As I say, I would spend a little bit more time on this than I'm doing now. But this is just to show you the basics of it. So then I've got that section then completely covered. Now again, if you haven't got acrylic paint, if you haven't got the construction tape, you can just use a sheet of black card and you cut them into 1 inch wide strips, and then you crease them down the middle so that you've got obviously got 1/2 inch then on each side. And then this side here is one that I've done with card. So you would measure that out, snip it so it's the right length, measure it if you want to, and then put some glue on. And then stick it over the corner. And then again, you would do the same, doing all 4 corners, and then do the tops and the bottoms. In fact, I've just cut that a little bit too long. So just shave that little bit off. Doesn't matter if this is a little bit rugged, because obviously I'm going to be covering it over, because I'm going to put a strip across the bottom. So as you can see, I've done all my corners and sides, so they're all done. Now I want to put a piece of black cardstock in the bottom, because where the flap originally came up, over and down, there's a little hole here for that to sit in. And obviously if I put my finger on there, I'm putting my finger on the tape. So I actually just want to cover the whole of the base of that. I would suggest that you cut yours a little bit bigger than the measurement that you've got, because there's going to be nothing worse than cutting it too short, which, trust me, I have done that before. Because it's easier to cut some off than it is to add. And then that should, yeah, that slots in there nicely. So I'm going to put some glue on that to just hold it in place. Doesn't have to be a whole load of glue, because it's only to hold it in position. And then that can then slide in there. So now I've got my boxes sat on top of each other, and I want to form a hinge on the back to join the two together so that I can then open them out. So I'm just going to measure the height, and the height of the two sat together is 4 inches, and the length that I want the piece of card to be is 6 3/4 inches. So 4. In fact, I'm going to do it 1/8 of an inch bigger. I'll tell you why in a minute. 4 by, what did I say? 6 3/4. I said, didn't I? 6 3/4. Now the next thing that I want to do, and you can use your score pal for this, but I'm just going to do it by just folding it in half. And this is why I've added the extra 1/8 of an inch on, because of this fold line here. Because when it opens, it will need to have that little extra to account for the fold for when it opens. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue down this side so that I've got a mounting fold, and I'm going to put plenty of glue on this because I want it to have a good adhesion to the box. And then I'll glue that onto the what will be the back side of the box. So there's now a little bit of a gap between the edge of the box and the fold line. I'm talking like a 1/16 of an inch gap. And then I can stick this back side piece, and I've written B on the back so that I know I'm dealing with the right side, and then that will sit on that part of the hinge, and then if there is any excess card overhanging the edge here, I can actually just clip it off. Now I am going to glue it on, although I would normally leave it for that glue to just set a little. But I just want you to see what it does. B for back, Carol, B for back. Okay, and I would actually just peg those together or paper clip them together to make sure that I've got a strong bond between them. So mine's going to be a little bit flimsy at the minute, but it would then lift up and over and sit on top. Okay, so if I show you from the hinge side, so that folds down. Maybe you can see better that way. So that will fold down like that, but I'm going to have to paper clip these until that glue has set. So I'll see you back here in a minute. So I've been off, I've had a brew, as you do, whilst I was waiting for my glue to set. So I'm just going to take these clips off, and then I just want to show you close up as much as I can. I don't know whether you will be able to see it or not. Let me see if can you see there is like a tiny lip of the black card sticking above the top of the box. Can you see it sort of here? Tiny lip sticking up. That's why I cut that extra 1/8 of an inch, so that it just protrudes slightly above, so that it makes the folding of them easier, and then you get a flatter piece on the back as well. Now the other thing that I've now done is I've now got 2 sheets of 12 by 12 cardstock. So I'm now going to cut pieces to cover 1, 2, 3 sides, to do the top, and to put one on this hinge piece at the back, and then do the same on the bottom. 1, 2, 3, and 1 on the bottom. So I'm going to measure these with my ruler, and I'm just going to write a note on each of the cardboard pieces here. Now I don't want them the same size, I want them about 1/8 of an inch smaller on all sides. So if this is 6 3/4, then I'm going to take off 1/4 of an inch, so that I've got 1/8 of an inch border going round. So 1, 2, so this one will be 6 5/8 lengthways, and the width of it, that's 4 1/8, so 3 7/8. Now I'm not going to presume that this is going to be the same measurement. I am going to double check and measure that as well. The same with each of the sides that I'm going to do. So I'm now going to just go off, because you don't need to watch me measuring these, and I'm going to measure each one of these, and then I'm going to cut out the cardstock, and then I'll come back and show you what I'm going to do. See you in a sec. Okay, so I've cut out all my pieces, and I'm inking them all up with black soot. Because I've used the black tape, I want to ink them up with the black soot so that the paper kind of blends in towards the black tape a little bit. The other thing that you need to think about as well is the direction of the pattern. So that if you're using a directional pattern, then obviously you might want to just think about which way round you will need to cut your paper. So as you can see, I inked up the very edge of the paper to get rid of the white, and then I'm actually doing a small circular motion around the outer edge. So again, it fades from the black through to the colour of the paper. Now you don't have to do black. This is just purely my choice. And I'm now going to stick all of these pieces together, or onto my box, I should say. So I want that. No, hang on, let me get it right. That's the bigger one, so that's to go on the hinge at the back. So you could write on the back of all of these pieces of paper which one is to go where, and then you could number each side of the box as well, so that it all complements each other and you know exactly where each piece has got to go. So that is going to go on the back. Now you can fold this in half first if you want to, but it's hard to match up the fold lines to match up with the fold lines of the black card that I put on earlier as the hinge. So I'm just going to sit that on top, and that's why I'm putting this one first, so I know that the glue is then completely set before I actually then fold it open. All right. I'm also going to put 2 on the front because I want to show you how I'm going to put the hinge on as well. So again, I want these on so that again I know that that glue has set off before I actually do the closure on it. And I've done it directional on these, so I want that way around. So as you can see, I've left a little bit of a border all the way around so that you can still see the black tape, but because I've used the black ink on the edge of the papers, they're now blending in a little bit towards the black tape. Okay, last one of the side pieces. Then I've only got the top and the bottom to do. And if you want to, try and make sure that they line up, you know, down here, down these sides. The other thing that you could do is if you wanted to use this box for a different purpose, is on the base here you could actually put a nice piece of felt, so then it's not going to scratch any surface. Okay, so that's the basis of my box done, and hopefully, let's just put my fingers on it, that will, yes. And again, once this glue is definitely set, so tomorrow, so as you can see, look, it's not sitting flat at the moment, but tomorrow when I know the glue is definitely set, I will probably use my bone folder and just run it down there to make that crease that little bit more definite, so that it definitely folds, because at the moment, I don't know whether you can see that, but it's rounded and I want it a little bit crisper. But by the time you've put stuff in, it weighs it down anyway. And now I'm going to put my closure on, which is this sort of hook and latch kind of thing, so that that hooks in there and then it's held on with some brads through those holes. Now you can mark this with a pencil, or you can just go straight in with your poker tool. So I'm going to sit those on there and just determine roughly where they need to be, and make sure that they're in the centre as well. So I will, so I've already marked this one, I think. You need to keep the two together to start with, and they're quite close to the edge as well. Okay, so I've marked the top on, so I've done that bit already. So I'm going to put, well, I'm not using that brad anymore, it's on the floor somewhere. I'll get another one out in a bit. So I'm going to put my brads in there. That's the first one, and I'm going to splay that open on the inside, And then what I can do afterwards is I can put some more tape on the back of those so that my fingers don't catch on those sharp edges of the brad. And then the bottom one, we sit that back on there and then sit that in place and poke a hole a little bit, poke a hole a little bit the other side, and then I can poke those holes in there. Okay, let's stick that on there, and that one goes in there, and then that should hook in there. Yay, to keep it closed. So all done and dusted. I just clip it open it up, put all my stuff inside my trays, and I'm ready to go. I'll just tidy up my desk and then I'll come back and I'll show you how I made a journal cover with the other scrap pieces of the boxes that were left over. See you in a sec. So cast your minds way back to the beginning when we had the original box and we cut off this top lid. Right, so you're going to need 2 of those, and obviously if you're making the boxes as I've just shown, you will end up with 2 anyway. We're then going to chop off these flap edges on both of them. Now if you have a look closely, I'll show you on this one, can you see that this line is shorter than this fold line here? So I'm going to follow this long line and cut it the same right the way down. So I'm going to use that fold line as my guide, cut it down and cut straight the way across. And then what I'm going to do is these 2 shorter bits I'm going to stick on top of each other. So I'm just going to put some glue around the edge there, down the middle, and sit one on top of the other. And here's one I prepared earlier, so we'll use that one. Now we've got a ridge from here down to this bit, and on this side from here down to this bit. So I'm going to put my micropore tape on to just flatten that edge down a little and make it a little bit more even. You're not going to get rid of it completely, but it'll just help to soften it a little bit. And if I apply a little bit of pressure, it'll just squash down that corrugated card edge a little as well. So I'm going to do one on that side, one on this side, and just press it down, just smooth out that edge a little. Then I've got this piece of leftover paper, so I'm going to use that, and I'm going to put glue on all the outside of this. And on the spine area. And on this side. I'm going to make sure that I've definitely got some down where that crease is. So I want to make sure that the paper adheres down that crease mark. And then I'm going to leave about 3/4 of an inch to an inch all the way around. And trim off that excess, and then I'm going to trim off that corner, leaving a little bit of space from the corner to the edge of the paper. But just in case you cut it too short, one of the things that you can do is these corners that you've just cut off, so those little bits, you can put a bit of glue on there. And you can stick it in the corner like that, so that when you fold it over, if it leaves a little bit of a gap, then at least you've got the matching kind of blue underneath. And then I'm going to fold those over. Do that on all 4 sides. Now we've got a double thickness here at this spine, so I'm actually going to snip down here where this spine is, because otherwise you'll just end up with a bulging piece of paper and it'll open up. See there, look, you see I've got a gap there, so if I stick one of those triangles on, it won't be so noticeable. And again, I'm just doing this real quick so that you can see what the end result looks like. And then, as I say, I'm just going to snip a tiny triangle. So that small of a triangle out where that spine area is, to just make it easier for it to sit comfortably. Glue this short edge down and then to the long edges that are now split into 3 separate parts. Just going to use my bone folder to just push them down into place. Now that's where that space was, and because I've got the blue underneath it, it's not quite so obvious. We're going to be covering most of this over anyway, but it just helps to disguise it a little bit further. Okay, and then very, very carefully, because I don't want the paper to crack, and if it does crack I can put some lace over it. And that's a front cover done. And then I would put paper on the inside. Now you could cut this into 3 separate sections and do the outer covers and then the spine over the top. Just for ease, I'm just going to do it as one big piece. And then that will glue on there. And then I need to leave that to dry, so I'll probably sit some books on top of this and leave that to dry before I refold it again, so that would then be the inside. And you can see, look, there's a slight bulge there, but what I would then probably do is I would use elastic bands around the spine area to then attach some signatures to that. But that's the basics of it really. So it was just a way of using up that bit of cardboard to make it into a little journal cover. Let's just use a bone folder. Just mark that crease. Let's see if I can do it. The glue's still too wet really, but yeah, can you see how it's it's buckling off the paper background here because it needs to set, but you can sort of get the idea now of how you can make yourself a cover with those leftover bits of card from the boxes. As I say, the older ones are better, the newer ones have got a tear top. But yeah, so that was my original one, which I decorated with papers from Stampin' Up, and these were just some papers that I'd got with my stash. But as I say, they come in handy for little trays for storing your stuff in whilst you're working, and you also get a journal cover from it as well. Look forward to seeing you again in the next video. Thanks for bearing with me on this one. See you again soon. Bye for now.